Harrow is one of those frames that a lot of people respect, but don't necessarily reach for when they want a gun platform. I know, I was there too once. I was guilty of only ever using him for one thing: eidolon hunting. Those were the days, but that is where it stopped. Then with the release of the Old Peace update, I decided to blow the dust off of my Harrow, and oh, was I wrong? This frame is a crit menace. A completely self-sustaining machine that gives you everything that you could want in a gun platform, who can easily handle himself solo or be a literal blessing to your team. Let me tell you why. First things first, where to actually get Harrow. Base Harrow is a semi-tricky frame to get. His main blueprint you can only get from the Chains of Harrow quest, no surprises there, which does require the completion of the War Within quest. This is a really important lore quest for those of you who haven't done it yet, so enjoy it. His system's blueprint you can acquire from defection missions on either Phobos, Saturn or Neptune, and you could also spend some time in the Kuva Fortress survival missions for a chance to roll it. His neuroptics will also come from Kuva Fortress survival missions, so if you want to kill two birds with one stone, you can just run those if you have access to them. Then his chassis, one of Warframe's greatest and age-old memes. If you have spent any amount of time relic cracking, which I'm confident everyone has done at this point, chances are you have picked up one of these. This is by far the easiest one to get, and you're probably going to pick up a lot of them across your Warframe career. Alternatively, you can go straight for his primed variant if you have the plat. Usually his parts are vaulted, but at the time of recording this video, he is part of primed resurgence. So depending on when you decide to get a hold of him, you may have to sink some plat. However, it is definitely worth it if you can afford it. Quick pause, Tenno. If you've been enjoying the content, like and subscribe. We're pushing for 1,000 subs, and subscribing costs 0 plat, and somehow still pays off. Thank you so much. Back to the video. Alrighty, let's go through what makes him so incredible as a gun platform: his abilities. Harrow's passive doubles his overshield capacity. It's because of this passive that Harrow's prime variant boasts the highest shield capacity out of all Warframes in the game, with Hildryn following close behind. Harrow will also start each mission with 100% energy, so it's kind of like a built-in preparation mod. Sure, energy is plentiful these days, but it's still nice to start off with full energy. Not that energy will be a problem for you, you are playing Harrow after all. Harrow's first ability is Condemn. This is Harrow's subsumed ability and is arguably one of the most useful and underrated CCs in the game, at least in my opinion. Condemn sends out a conical wave that chains enemies to the ground and conveniently exposes their heads for headshots. By default, it will hold them in that position for 6 seconds at base, which can be increased by modding for some duration. Each enemy that is hit by Condemn's wave will restore some of your shields and is a core part of Harrow's kit as a whole. This shield regeneration will only apply on enemies that aren't currently affected by Condemn's chains, so keep that in mind. It can also extend into overshields, which is of course great for us. This ability will be your main shield generator if you are rocking with just his raw kit, and it's also a great CC for when you are in a sticky situation and you just need to make some breathing room. Now, what makes this ability so good is that it is one of the few CC abilities that can directly affect acolytes, making it a helpful tool for Tenno who have just entered Steel Path and find themselves struggling with killing them, or if you just can't be bothered with having to keep tabs on them, as they can be extra slippery sometimes. Its augment, Tribunal, is okay. It allows your teammates to get the full benefits of your other skills, Penance and Thurible, every time that they kill enemies that are currently chained via Condemn. You could make use of it if you have a very specific goal within your team, or if you wanted to play Harrow as a full-on support. But for general play, I found it's totally fine running without it. Your squad will still get huge benefits from your other abilities. This brings us to Penance. Casting Penance causes Harrow to do a little spanky on his back, which sacrifices your shields in exchange for increased fire rates, which affects melee weapons as well, alongside increased reload speed. This increased reload speed benefits Incarnon weapons because reload speed reduces the time that it takes to switch to your Incarnon form. In most cases, your Incarnate form swap will be almost instant. Even though Penance sacrifices your shields, it will only grant you increased duration per cast and nothing else. So this means that having more shields will just mean you have to cast this ability less. At base, the extra duration gained per cast is set at 1.54 seconds per 100 shields, which is directly affected by ability duration. The maximum duration that you can get from casting Penance is capped at 120 seconds, so in most cases with enough duration, roughly 2 to 3 casts are enough to reach it. As if the buff to fire rate and reload speed weren't enough, while under the effects of Penance, a percentage of the damage that you deal to enemies will convert into health for both you and your allies that are in your affinity range. At base, this is 5% and can be increased with ability strength. Having a high fire rate weapon like the Burst on Incarnate, for example, will stack a lot of health really quickly, although you'll be more than okay because Penance will already give you a huge increase to fire rate in general, so any weapon that you decide to use with Harrow will be okay. This lifesteal also extends to things like defense objectives as long as they are in your affinity range. However, instead of restoring a percentage of life back per enemy that you kill, it will restore up to 50 health per second instead, which is still useful for longer defense missions, especially when the target moves around a lot. However, you will have to be careful when casting Penance while in mission. Because it sacrifices all of your shields when you cast it, it can leave you vulnerable. While this won't be too much of an issue at lower levels, you will feel it in higher levels or even level caps. This is where Condemn will come in to quickly restore all of the shields that you have just spent, or Harrow's Covenant ability, which gives you some breathing room to replenish your shields, which we will talk about in a second. Next up, we have Thurible. Thurible is a core part of Harrow's whole gameplay loop as a fully self-sustaining crit machine support thing. Casting Thurible will channel your energy into Harrow's, Thurible, which will drain your current energy. A percentage of the energy drained per tick is then stored in the Thurible, which is reflected in this number over here. If you choose to end the channel early or run out of energy, Thurible will create an aura around Harrow. As long as this aura remains active, whether or not they are actually in the aura, any enemy that you kill will restore energy equal to the amount that you've channeled, to you and any allies within said aura range. Getting headshot kills multiplies this energy amount by 4, which turns Harrow into a near infinite source of energy sustain. Sadly, if your teammates are using toggled abilities that drain energy per second, like Gloom, they cannot benefit from Thurible's energy sustain. Out in the wild, I've seen many players who feel like they have to max out Thurible's channel. In 90% of cases, channeling to between 20 to 30 or so energy is more than enough to supply energy to you and your teammates, but you do you. The less time that you spend channeling Thurible, the more time that you can spend killing. Warding Thurible is the augment for this ability. Out of all of his augments, this one is the most niche in my opinion. Outside of very specific circumstances like maybe Eidolon hunting, you won't have to use this one. It will require you to keep channeling Thurible to get any real use out of it, which isn't ideal. Last but not least, it's Harrow's fourth ability, Covenants. Covenant grants invulnerability to you and allies within affinity range around Harrow, storing all of the damage dealt to you and your allies. After the invulnerability ends, you will receive the Retaliation buff, which buffs both your and your allies' crit chance and is influenced by how much damage has been stored while under the effects of the Covenant invulnerability. This buff caps out at 50% crit chance bonus on body shots and 200% bonus on headshots. Depending on your ability strength levels, you will only need to reach around 3000 damage or so prevented to achieve this cap. The higher your strength, the less damage that you need to stack. This is not a lot for higher levels, but at the lower levels, things are likely to die way before they deal enough damage to get you there. Now, for Covenant's augment, Lasting Covenant, a topic of debate for many Harrow players from what I've seen. Lasting Covenant will allow you to extend the duration of Covenant's crit chance buff by 3 seconds after killing an enemy with a headshot. This duration increase does have a cap though, which is 3 times the initial duration of Retaliation's crit chance buff. Sure, the quality of life on this is great if crits are your main focus and you want to keep it going as long as you can. But as long as said crit buff is active, you cannot recast Covenant. This means that if you typically find yourself dying a lot during missions and you really need an oh shit button, Lasting Covenant can effectively take that away from you. Personally, I love using this as the constant upkeep of crits is nice for general missions, but there's nothing wrong with swapping it out for something else if you prefer. Let's talk weapon synergies. Realistically, any weapon will work well with Harrow's kit. His buffs to fire rates, reload speed, and of course crit chance helps make a lot of weapons that feel underwhelming perform quite well. However, being a headshot focused frame, naturally weapons that make headshots easier to hit are welcome additions to your arsenal. It's for this reason that the dual Toxicist Incarnon works so well with Harrow. The dual Toxos Incarnon form causes its shots to ricochet to nearby enemies. These ricochets can trigger headshots. And this makes it really easy to sustain headshot-based buffs because you can fire it pretty much anywhere on enemies and there is a good chance you will hit headshots without even trying. That and Harrow is perfect for the dual Toxos. That crit chance and that huge fire rate increase makes this weapon even more destructive. If you don't want to use the dual Toxos, you can get away with using Scourge for guaranteed headshots as well. Simply throw it down and any bullet that you fire at the fields generated by the Scourge will automatically target headshots. This weapon was originally shipped with Harrow for this reason. Additionally, any weapons that have a naturally high base crit chance will also complement Harrow really well due to his Covenant's crit buff. I found that using the Burst on Incarnon with him is absolutely disgusting, but then again, this gun is already filthy. Alrighty Tenno, it's build time. These two builds are ones that I have found to be the most straightforward and effective. These aren't the only ways to build Harrow, so if you have come up with some crazy builds for him, pop it in the comments. First things first, let's go over the Archon shards that I use with my Harrow. It's a very simple setup just to round off some of the stats. 1 Amber shard for casting speed, 3 strength shards, and 1 for ability duration. These won't change over these two builds that we will go through now. This first one is a good general purpose build. It works well solo, it works well with your team, and it's pretty cheap former wise. It's a true jack of all trades as far as Harrow is concerned. We aren't subsuming anything in this build as his base kit synergizes very well as it is. Despite Harrow's massive shield pool, if you are dealing with very high level enemies like those found in EDA or even high level Void Cascade, those shields will disappear pretty fast. All it takes is for a few juicy toxin procs and those shields mean nothing. Even if you decide to play without Lasting Covenant and you want to rely more on the invulnerability from Covenant itself, I have found that adding in additional defensive layers goes a long way with Harrow. Of course, some of these layers are absolutely overkill for lower levels, but they have come in handy more times than I'd care to admit. Rapid Resilience is fast becoming one of my favorite mods to put on my Warframes. With it, status procs will be gone in almost an instant, which is really good to have as it's mostly status effects that will kill you at higher levels. To complement this, we have Adaptation in here alongside Arcane Circumvent. Now, I know what you may be thinking, surely Rapid Resilience is redundant with Arcane Circumvent. In theory, yes. If you find it comfortable to run without Rapid Resilience and just want to rely on the armor and overguard that you steal from enemies using Circumvent, then you could replace it with a duration mod like Augur Message or Transient Fortitude for more strength if you preferred. However, I have found that Rapid Resilience has saved my ass more often than not at higher level play, but it comes down to your preference. Molt Augmented for our customary ability strength increase as well. With Harrow, I find that focusing more on duration and strength plays better than heavy amounts of range. That said, putting in Augur Reach adds just enough range to be useful and then still gives us some shields back as we cast our abilities. Now for the Aura mod. Pretty much everything will work with Harrow, so you could just use whatever you have or whatever you like playing with. However, I find that Worthy Camaraderie is a really nice addition to the build. With Harrow, you will typically focus on weak point hits, namely headshots, so that 75% weak point critical chance is a really nice bonus. For the Exodus slot, normally I don't really advocate putting stuff in here, but I like to run with Mobilize because of more parkour velocity, but you can put whatever you want in here or just leave it out. It won't affect you too much. And now for the big debate. At the moment, I have Lasting Covenant in here because personally I like the constant upkeep of the crit chance buff. You can also swap it out for something else if you would prefer to keep Recasting Covenant and want to lean more into the invulnerability from it. Where I would definitely not recommend using Lasting Covenant will be for missions where you won't be able to get enough headshot kills to keep your duration up. If you decide to use this build, you will be a disgusting gun platform, have fantastic survivability, and with the right gun pairing, deal some filthy red crits. And now we come to one of my favorite solo builds to play in missions. It's the perfect combination of absolutely filthy red crits and survivability. Evade Harrow. I swear this subsume was made for this frame. Harrow's main focus is headshots, and seeing as headshots and other weak point hits extend the duration of evade, it synergizes perfectly with him as a subsume. However, this build does come with a few caveats. First, this build is a slightly more active version of Harrow. It's extremely effective, but you will need to stay on top of your durations. Even though your max evade duration is at roughly 32 seconds, it's very easy to forget about it when you are doing something like a solo void cascade and the exilizers are keeping you busy. Secondly, this build plays better solo than it does in a team. If you are in a lobby where everyone is nuking everything and you can't even get enough headshot or kills to sustain your durations, you will lose a lot of your effectiveness as well as your survivability. It's doable in teams provided you are using weapons like the dual Toxicist Incarnon to score some headshots. Heck, I'd even go so far as to say use them even in solo. It makes sustaining this build so much simpler. Alrighty, with that out the way, let's go through the actual build. First off is where to subsume evade. In my opinion, the best option is to subsume it over Thurible. You will lose out on the infinite energy sustain, but that won't be too big of a deal with this build in particular. Instead, we will substitute it with Equilibrium to give us some form of energy sustain. This build is about duration, not how often we can spam our abilities. You will still have access to Condemn to help generate shields, but one of my favorite melee weapons to use with this build is the Rack the Dark Dagger, which you can get from Red Veil. Using a simple influence setup on it, you can regenerate shields very quickly with a couple of strikes due to its unique trait, Mind Haze, and actually has become my preferred way of generating shields with Harrow, so you could generate shields that way if you wanted to as well. Speaking of low energy costs, you can get away with using normal flow here as well as blind rage. The 45% efficiency won't hurt too much, and a 380 energy pool is perfectly okay. This build does have low range because we aren't relying on ranged base abilities. Like I said before, we care more about duration and strength here. If you keep Condemn, then it will still have an effective range of roughly 10 or so meters, which is doable. Most enemies will run to your location anyway, so they won't be too far away. As far as the aura mod goes, I'd recommend keeping Worthy Camaraderie as it synergizes very well with this build and with Harrow in general. Finally, we have Lasting Covenant in here because we want to keep our crit buff up as long as possible. When you get into a mission, be sure to cast Covenant first and get your crit chance buff, then cast Evade and go to town. If you cast Evade first, enemies will struggle to even hit you because you're invisible, and then you will struggle to build up your damage stacks. So just keep that in mind. Luckily, with around 300% strength, you only need to stack around 1000 damage dealt to you to achieve the max crit chance, so it's nice and quick. Finally, we come to our arcanes. And what better arcane to pair with a skill that turns you invisible than Arcane Crepuscular? That 3x final crit multi is juicy, and considering we will be invisible all the time, it's worth it. Then, Circumvent. I like using Circumvent because even though we will be invisible, ground status procs can still hit you. Even worse, a rogue magnetic proc or two will wreak havoc on your energy, and of course, toxin procs are just as bad. So to counteract this, simply steal some overguard from a nearby Eximus unit, and that will keep you safe from all those things and keep you from being knocked down. Now this build has only two weaknesses: nullifiers and our good friend, Violence the Acolyte. Violence tends to spawn right next to you and will immediately nullify all of your abilities, but nothing a Condemn cast can't solve. Aside from that, this build is one of the safest builds I've played. It deals a ton of damage, is extremely tanky because you almost never get hit, and is really simple to play. It's builds like this that make Harrow a terrifying gun platform, so if you haven't tried it yet, give it a go and let me know what you think. I must confess, in the past I thought Harrow was a support frame, who was only good for buffing the team and not much else. Once I actually took the time to play him properly, I realized his true potential. Sure, there may be stronger gun platforms out there, but few can do what Harrow can do. His entire kit is one self-sustaining crit machine that can make guns into the best versions of themselves, all the while preaching the gospel of Harrow to the Origin system. Thank you so much for watching to the end, and if you haven't already, consider dropping a like and subscribe. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support would go a long way. Thank you again, and as always, stay safe, Tenno, and I shall see you in the next one.